Teniola and Sara will be telling you about their experiences on call, as well as giving you details about on call shifts. This is a really interesting talk for any medical students, whether it be final year or first year, who want to learn more about what it's like being a jury doctor and what it's like being a jury doctor on call. So remember to join our Facebook group, remember to join our Slack, and also remember to join the Medicine Academy YouTube channel by liking and subscribing. So take it away, Teniola and Sara. Enjoy, guys.
Talking about on calls today.
Yep. He's talking about our on-call shift. So you're on surgery, I'm on medicine. So I think they'll be very different.
Yeah.
And at different hospitals too. So we probably had very different experiences of our on-call shifts.
Yeah. So maybe we should start with just saying like what our on calls entail or what they're like. So my on calls are, my normal shift is 8 till 5, but it's actually a lot longer because we come in a bit earlier and end a bit later, which I'm sure you guys do as well.
Yeah.
And then an on call day is 5 till 8:30. On a weekday, or obviously if you're doing a weekend, it will be 8 till 8:30 on a Saturday and Sunday. I don't know what yours are similar to that, or
Yeah, so ours are kind of, there's two types. There's either the clerking on call, so you're helping with intake, people that have been admitted to hospital and you're admitting them to medicine and getting a full history and examining them, and you're the one that gets like most info from them. Or you're doing ward cover, which is hectic, but yeah, so both of those, either way, if it's during the week, they start after the end of your shift. My shift finishes at 5, and then until 9:30, I'd be either on ward cover or clerking. And if it's the weekend, it'll be 8 to 8:30 for clerking and 9 till 9:30 for ward cover.
okay. So your ward cover, is it because you're on respiratory now? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, respiratory.
Your ward cover, is that what? How many wards would you cover?
I think in total there's maybe 7
Oh,
7
wow.
wards maybe. I probably should have counted, but yeah, some of them are a lot bigger than others. But that'd be, yeah, the standard medicine ward. So we have like kind of a general admissions medicine unit. We've got respiratory, cardiology, gastro, we've got diabetes and endo. So I'd be covering all those floors.
Okay. And how many F1s are there on that standard medicine ward cover on call, for example? Would it just be you, or?
Yeah, so when it's ward cover, there's one F1 on ward cover who holds the bleep. And if it's the weekend, I think the SHO that's on ward cover as well doesn't hold the bleep. So you get all the bleeps that are for you and for the SHO. So it's, yeah, it's interesting.
That's a lot. Okay.
How does your work work? Is it just you, or do you have a team going around?
Yeah, just one for general surgery. So you cover all of general surgery. So there's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 firms, so which have 2 or 1 F1s on. So you cover all the firms, and then same. It doesn't matter whether you're on the day or on the weekend. You see all the patients, and you're the only F1. So that's a lot.
Cool. How did you find your first on-call shift?
So my first one is the one that I did the video about. For people who might know, me and Tenny have got our 13 hours Instagram channel, which I found really horrendous. I think that was more not the content, not the content as in it wasn't difficult. I just think I wasn't prepared. It was quite hard to go in day one to do an on-call shift, and I just found it really difficult. Since then, they've got a lot better in terms of, I think I'm slightly better at prioritizing what needs to be done now, what can be done a little bit later, but I still am finding them tough. They're tough. You know, when you're sat there, you probably have the same, your bleep just does not stop going off, and you're writing down jobs and none of the jobs are getting done. They're just, the list is getting longer and longer. Yeah,
gosh, yeah. I think we both had on calls on our first days of starting the job, didn't we?
So yeah,
I was on the clerking one, so I probably was a bit misdirected on how I thought the on calls for the rest of the like time you working would go.
yeah.
So my first one being the clerking one, it was actually quite nice. I only clerked in one patient between 5 and 9 before the handover. And like the reg was very supportive, was like, oh, just do this, do that, type here. Consultant came straight away, we post takes. I was like, oh, great, like on call's fine. You know, next week I had my ward cover on call, and literally I don't think it could have gone worse. I ended up missing handover. I had to hand over to the SHO taking over for me at like 10 p.m. instead of 9 o'clock when I was supposed to. I don't think I'd answered my bleep for like an hour. I was literally like crumbling, melting. No idea how to recover from the situations I got myself into that night.
I think on calls are really like dominoes. Like if you start off a bit wobbly, and I find this a lot on the weekday covers, for example, say I've got my normal ward work 8 till 5, I'm running behind because I've been on the post take or whatever, and then you're on the on call, you already start like slightly wobbly foundation, and then if it starts mayhem, then you just completely crumble. Like you can't really build yourself back up on the on call. You need to be solid from the beginning. I think it's really hard.
Yeah, do you think there's anything you've done particularly or specifically that has made you solid from the beginning? Like, what could you think that, I'll do this every time so that in the future I'm ready?
Yeah, I think trying to challenge, I think at the beginning what was also really difficult was everyone was a new F1, so the qualities of handovers probably weren't great either.
Yeah.
So people were handing over things that either were poor handovers in the sense that I didn't really know what I was meant to do, so they'd say something like, chase a scan, and I was like, great, I can chase a scan, but then you forget to think, okay, well, if this scan comes back, what action am I taking on that, for example? So just knowing to ask when people are saying, can you chase this, chase these bloods, do this, do that, and you're like, okay, so what's the plan of action after that? Because, you know, I'm the F1, so if something weird comes up on the CT, like, am I calling my reg? Is this like an urgent theatre situation? Like, what's the following, what's the next thing? And also maybe being slightly more assertive. So like, for example, I don't know, X's family needs to be called. If that adds to your whole list of lists, obviously family updates are really important, but at 6:30 on a Friday evening, me as the on-call doctor as well, when I've never seen the patient, I don't know anything about them, I'm probably not the best person, so that doesn't really need to be a stress for my on-call.
No.
But those things you can only sort of learn as you go along, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I think definitely. Some of the points that you've raised, I'm definitely still trying to get my head around. Sometimes I really like being nice at work. So like, you know, when it comes to being assertive, I'm like, oh no, I'll do that. Fine, I'll do that for you. And things like you said, trying to find out what actions need to be taken after jobs are given, like things that need to be chased. I literally forget. I'm like, okay, fine. I've written down this, and that, and then it comes to it, and I get the result. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's
it's really annoying because then if I have to then hand it over to someone else when my shift finishes, they're like to me, so what do you want me to do? And I'm like, stupid, it's really silly. But when you do get your head around it, I think then you kind of will be a lot more slick. Like, yeah, I'm hoping that I remember next time. But the things I think I personally have found that I need to do before I like start my bit of on call is make sure I have my sheet of paper and literally divide it into the necessary sections. So like wards extension number, patient's info, why patients come in. Then we can have the jobs, probably a little column about what to do after. And then finally, if there's anything that needs to be handed over, that's really important for me. Another thing, which is, I don't know, hit and miss, but having coloured pens, I found really helpful.
I found that helpful too. Like, there's different things of being like, scans can be in one colour, for example. This is just stuff that I've noticed on the day-to-day job as well. Helps you prioritise it a little bit better. So, for example, I didn't realise how important discharge was until I really started the job, like how you need to get the discharge stuff done maybe quite early on in the job, and I didn't really think of that as a priority. I was like, it's a discharge summary, like it will get done when it gets done. And then you realise actually there's transport or this or that and so many things depending on it. So, and then you can put like all the important things in your red pen and then the less slightly important things and then tick them off green to make yourself feel better when they're all done.
I love literally colouring in those boxes, like done, 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 done. That's really good. How have you found things, I don't know, emotionally in terms of on-calls?
I think, I'm not sure how it is on medicine. I think with surgery, luckily on my on-call, so the weekend I was really dreading because you do a ward round of every single surgical patient, which I just was dreading it because a ward that normally has, I think 6 or 7 F1s was now 1, and I just couldn't get my head around how I'm going to do the job of 7 F1s. Like, how does that work? But it was actually fine. The consultant was really nice. Like, she was great. She was really rapid, but she was also like, okay, Sara, have you got that all down? Should we take some more time for you to get everything? Like, she was really aware. And the reg was also really good. Like, he was very accessible, which I think is hard in surgery. So even if he was in theatre, he'd be like, okay, Sara, let's run through everything before I go into theatre, or here's the number of the theatre if you need to ring me. Whereas obviously it's not always like that. So sometimes when people are like, oh, well, you're not alone when you're on call, you've got your SHO, you've got your reg, you've got your consultant, you're like, well, actually sometimes the consultant goes home, and if the reg and the SHO are like an ED or they're clerking or they're in theatre, you actually kind of are on your own. And
Yeah.
that's not their fault or, you know, the hospital's fault. It's just the way the system works. And I think emotionally, I found that quite hard. When you've got 100 jobs or someone potentially a little bit sick, and you're always told just escalate, ask for help, like you're the F1.
But then you feel like you're kind of bothering people sometimes.
Exactly,
You
yeah.
know their workload's crazy. You're like, it's a valid escalation. I don't know. Like, oh, maybe I should try doing it. Maybe I shouldn't. Like, yeah, it's
So hard.
difficult.
And I think Simman has actually, this is slightly controversial, like maybe prepared us slightly wrongly for how on calls are. Because in Simman, things escalate so quickly. So your patient is like, you're there in the Simman room, and suddenly they go from like a slightly low blood pressure to like coning and need a CT and urgent neurosurgery, for example, when in real life it's not like that. And in Simman, they expect you to manage everything on your own, and you only call like the med reg right at the end when you're stuck. Whereas in practice, people get an ECG, they're not really sure about it, even if it's like AF, and they'll ring for help straight away. So I think I've gone in like, oh, I'm not sure if I should ask for help because like I don't really know. And then you ring the reg and they're like, oh, of course, like this is what you should do. And you're like, oh, right, okay.
I had one time where I think everyone was getting ready to go to lunch. On Sundays, we have like pizza lunches.
Oh.
Like, yeah, it's really nice. And everyone tries to go for lunch at the same time.
Yeah.
So everyone had gone, and I was like, oh, I quickly just want to sort out one patient upstairs, then I'll come join you. It'll be 5 minutes, don't worry.
Classic.
It was not peri-arrest that we saw earlier on in the day. Blood pressure, like, seriously dropping. And I was like, okay, Sim man, let's give some fluids. Come on, let's do that. And then whilst I was like getting myself sorted, I think one of the nurses had been like, called like CCOT, like the outreach team, to get some extra help for me. And then I'd messaged the group once, you know, whilst it was all going on, because I was like, I don't want to disturb everyone because everyone's just gone for lunch. So let me try and manage it and just send a message. That's not necessarily putting out like any calls.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reg comes, and then so does the SHO, and they're like, yeah, you should have escalated that one. Maybe put out a peri-arrest call. I was like, oh, I mean, their blood pressure came up. I helped.
Man, they're like, right, put fluids up, do this, and you do it all on your own. And I think that's why and I think because everyone is so busy, there's a real fear when you're on the on-call of bothering people. Whereas when you're not on the on-call, there's like 6 other F1s, so you can just like look around and be like, so what do people think? And then you can all work together for an answer. If you're on your own, you're just like, should I ask? Should I not? Are you going to be annoyed? Also, are you going to think that I'm a terrible doctor because I'm even asking you this question? And it's a lot.
I think I've had quite a few times where I've got back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible doctor. And I think you've been aware of times where I've just been like, like what is going on? But yeah, I think the senior support really makes or breaks those on-call shifts. I've had times where I have had to try and escalate to a reg, and you can just hear they're like, oh, right, just do this. And you're just kind of like, okay, I don't want to call you again because I'm scared that, do you know what I mean, I'm just bothering you. Whereas you get others that are like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, fine, I'll come back and check that later, do this, do that. Are you okay? It literally makes all the difference.
It makes such a difference. The weekend that I just had, the reg was so lovely, so approachable. Like, yep, Sara, cool, should we do a CBD for that? And I was like, oh my gosh, like this, like, so let's check. Are you happy? Like, kept checking in. When there are others, and obviously it is also workload dependent if they're really busy, and you ask them a question, they're like, yep, and you're like, oh, right,
okay, I'll just go to hide now. Okay, bye.
But yeah, on calls, I think they're definitely the trickiest part of starting work, like 100%.
Yeah, I think we've definitely, like, it is the deep end. We get thrown into the deep end really quickly.
Yeah. I think for us as well, probably, we're both working in similar areas as well. The like pace of work compared to where we went to university is rapid. Like, I know people have always said surgery is rapid, but I feel like working in South London hospitals, which I think both of ours are quite like stereotypical what you'd expect from a South London hospital as well.
People told me what it could be like, and I guess like where we went to uni, where we even had our interim, the areas were a lot wealthier, and you can really see the contrast in the hospitals. And you can see the contrast in the demographics of patients, you can see the contrast in the way that hospital operates, organisation systems, and it's different. It's a real steep learning curve. But yeah, I think it's an opportunity to definitely learn a lot whilst we're there. That's the only thing I keep saying. I'm like, I'm learning a lot.
What tips would you give to maybe the brand new F1 whose first shift is an on-call like ours? to prepare themselves, maybe for the final year students who are, you know, probably some of them are quite behind on clinical skills anyway because of all this COVID stuff, what they can do to optimize the placement that they have left.
Yeah.
Being prepared for the on-call, what advice would you give?
I think one thing that was actually quite useful for me is I did something called the ratting shift. I think you. And that's where we had the opportunity anyway from up through our medical school to spend times on the weekends or evenings working in the hospital in A&E and helping out with things like bloods, cannulas, like all the jobs that like maybe don't get done as quick when all the doctors are busy in A&E. And I think that's really helpful, just trying to get good at things like bloods and cannulas, because those are some of the things you do get into about. And if you're quick and like slick at them, then you kind of get the rest of your jobs done quickly as well.
Yeah.
I think another thing that I found quite helpful is during one of my placements in the final year, I like made really good friends with one of the F1s, and she was like, "Oh, why don't you like stay with me on an evening shift?" And I know that that doesn't sound like a good thing and a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
But she was helping me with something, I was helping her with something else. So at the end of the day, me staying and doing that evening with her and watching what she escalated, what she didn't escalate, and what she dealt with by herself really like stayed with me. Because in my head, I'm kind of like, oh, what would blah blah do? Like she was such a good doctor. Like she was so good. So just literally like find someone you like and you like enjoy their work style. And I think it makes all the difference. Yeah. I think one final thing I'd add to that also is just really being nice to teams that you meet. I know people say this all the time, and it's like we don't go onto the walls with the intention of being rude. Like people like to assume that like as we come as doctors, we come with a sense of arrogance to us, and that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when you do try and become like good, like really good friends with the people you're working with, sometimes it does make work a lot easier at the same time. Yeah. So I have certain wards that I go to and they're like, "Oh, you're back. Like, let me help you with this, let me help you with that." And yeah, it makes, yeah, all the difference. I think just finding, and I learned that from watching one of the F2s whilst on interim in Kingston. So I guess it's just definitely a thing of finding doctors that you enjoy their work style, enjoy the way they interact with other doctors, enjoy the way they interact with other staff members and how they get things done, and kind of just observing very carefully how they work.
Yeah, I think I echo basically exactly the same thing. I was going to say bloods and cannulas. So I think we were quite lucky from where we went to uni, that we had quite a lot of hands-on experience quite early on.
Yeah.
And obviously, coming to a London hospital, I'm surrounded by a lot of F1s who were trained in London, and maybe who didn't have as much experience. So things like bloods and cannulas, I mean, they throw everyone off. Everyone's had that patient who really needs a cannula and you can't get one in, and it's just a nightmare. But I would say if you're at one of those med schools that maybe you haven't had as much exposure to now in your final year, really try, because the bleeps that you're going to be getting on call are, "We couldn't get this blood, can you help?" And often these are nurses who are really experienced people. Like, they do all the cannulas, they do all the bloods, and then you're the first port of call as their escalation, probably, and they are 100% better at you. Sometimes I go and I'm just like, well, if you guys have tried, I'm not going to get it, and it is just a fluke or a luck or a bit of confidence or someone else's eye. But try and practice those kind of things is something I would say. And like you said, at the beginning of your shift, for example, if you've got a blood and you don't get it, it really sort of throws you for the rest of the thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
And again, similarly to what you would say about sort of emulating what people around you that you like do. So, like, I spent a bit of time thinking that this one reg who I think is so great, like, why do I think he's so great? And it's because he's so friendly. Like, he's so nice to everyone. Like, he just goes around, he's like, "Boss man this, boss man that," like, so friendly, but also so good at his job. Like, he's very assertive, but in a really polite way in terms of referrals, and really knows his things, and is also just massively supportive. And I think if you're kind to people and people see that you're working hard, they're more inclined to help you. So if you've got a manic on call and you run onto the ward and say, "I need to do a blood," if you're friendly with the nurse and they're friends with you, they're like, "Do you want me to do that one for you?"
Yes.
Yes, please. I would love if you could do that. If you're the doctor who's swanning around and thinking you're better than everyone else, then they're not going to help you. So it's just remembering tiny things like that, I think. And also just remembering the first on call is going to be awful. I don't know anyone who's had their first on call and been like, "Yeah, it was a read."
Come out glowing. No, I literally like broke out as soon as I came.
I think we both cried.
Multiple times. But yeah, cool. Okay. I don't don't even know if I have any more questions. Do you have anything else?
I don't think I've got anything more to add about on-calls. I think, you know,
Yeah. Oh, actually, one final one. What kind of jobs are you actually getting called to do? I know it's bloods and cannulas definitely on there, but in surgery, is there anything else specific?
a lot of prescription reviews. So a lot of pain relief. So this person's just come out of like an operation, they're in pain, like what would you give? And at the beginning, I think those decisions, you're like, it's huge. Like even prescribing paracetamol, you sit there for ages and you check the BNF, even though you know the dose, and you're there and you check all their comorbidities and their drugs, and it's just such a simple decision. But as it comes on, then you just know what's given, and you know what you just observe what other people do, and you just follow that.
Yeah.
A lot of fluids. A lot of this person's in my mouth. They haven't been prescribed any fluids. That kind of a lot of just keeping people going is mainly the thing.
I've been told all our sole job is to keep people alive until they can be seen by the day team.
That's the thing. And a lot of things you don't want to make some massive rapid difference. So I remember both you and I had a really good experience in our interim of a bleep exercise. So we basically, some of the F1s there ran us a bleep thing. And one of the things they told us was that you don't need to be making these huge massive changes overnight. For example, like fluid balance, which is one that you get bleeped all the time about in surgery, like I think they're depleted, I think they need fluids and stuff. Like often, if nothing major is going wrong, obviously if they've got heart failure or whatever, they're not producing any urine, then you need to. But a lot of the time you can just keep them going on what was already going. So like if they're on 8-hourly bag, just keep them going, and you don't need to be coming in heroically in the middle of the night and just doing these huge things. Because we're not the experts anyway, and we don't know the patient, so just keep them ticking along until people who know them come and can sort it out.
100%, yeah. I think, yeah, mine's quite similar. I think I do less. I mean, I still do quite a lot of fluid prescribing and pain meds. But yeah, I think it's definitely quite similar in terms of jobs. I think a lot of things are like just review patients and make sure they're still okay, still alive. And a lot of the times my plans are continue. So as long as nothing drastic is happening with people, my plan usually stays the same.
Yeah, I think like my last sort of piece of advice would be just remember the basics. So like when we know the basics, like I might not know some niche things about how to treat this particular surgical problem, but essentially on call, like we said, the things are just keeping people going. So for example, I got called to this patient who was like classic stim man septic, and you just do what you know you should do. Like what's the exam answer? Like you take blood cultures, you dip their urine, you do things like that. And often by the time all that's done and you've started them on some antibiotics, it's handover anyway. Like these things take a while to go and assess the patient, this and that. So just remember the basics. You don't need to be going in and doing anything massively heroic, but you just need to know how to do the basics well, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely getting good at doing the basics well whilst you're in final year. I know it is difficult not having that extra bit of patient contact, but I think one thing, if you're in a hospital that doesn't have F1s organising this bleep teaching that we had, maybe just dropping a word. I'm sure someone will be very keen to like get involved in hosting that for med students.
Yeah.
And that will just maybe get you used to like what it's like to hold a bleep, which I found and also like very useful before ever being on call.
Yeah, so I've had some med students with us this last week, and I gave one of mine my bleep, and I was like, I'll be here. Like I was with her the entire time. Obviously, if it bleeps, like you just pass the phone over to me. But just having it and like getting used to that buzz and like just even knowing like what button to press and how do you bring them back, and just talking to the person on the phone. I would just suggest if you're a med student, things like that. Like don't worry about knowing every respiratory condition or every surgical problem under the sun. Because as F1s, I don't know about you, I feel like we're not doing that much medicine. We're just doing a lot of keeping people alive and admin.
I'm very good at admin.
Yeah, admin, exactly. So just, I don't know, ask to hold the bleep if you can, just even for like an hour with your F1 there, obviously, just to get used to it, because things like that, when your bleep is just constantly going off, is really quite emotionally stressful when you just...
Like now, even when I'm out and I hear anything beep, I'm like, oh, is that me? No, okay, I'm not at work.
Yeah.
I think also just group chats are the best.
Yes.
I have the 2 other docs that I'm always on call with, and we've got a little group chat. If anyone's struggling, we're like, help, please.
That's the thing, yeah. I have always always one girl or one boy I'm always doing my on-calls with. And there was one time there was a patient that and he was covering sort of urology and orthopedics, and there was nothing really going on. And I messaged him like, "Can you come see this patient with me?" And he was like, "Sure." And it just is nice just having another person with you. So be aware of who's on your on call, especially F1s, and just if you can't get a blood, maybe see if they can try and just help each other out because you're going to need them at some point.
You'll be like besties by the end of it anyway, so it's always good.
Anything else to add, do you think? Or
I think that's it. I think that's on calls so far.
Yeah, obviously we haven't done that many, but I think that's a good starting point for your first on calls.
Thank you so much, Teniola and Sara. I feel like I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. And remember to be here at the same time next week for the third installment of S-Docs with Eamon, going live with Obstetrics. It'll be really informative, really fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So remember to keep up to date with our content by joining our S-Docs Facebook group, join our S-Docs Slack chat, as well as liking and subscribing to the Meds Academy YouTube channel. See you guys later.